running on that platform.
Running on that platform. And that's okay, because it's my job. My mentor is currently the district attorney of the 10th Judicial District of Colorado, Bill Tebow. And he taught me when I first started running, as a leader, it's your job really to lead, to bring around the public to seeing it as the bigger picture. And I hope in programs like this, it's not popular to talk about prisons and what's happening in those prisons, but hopefully we can bring the attention around, whether it's in small bites or big bites. It starts with programs like this and the public hearing what's really happening in this country. We cannot keep doubling every decade the prison population in this state, and we have to get together and start fighting the profit of prison making. We've incentivized prisons. It's wrong. Not only is it wrong because it's immoral, it's wrong because it cheats taxpayers.
Now, speaking of taxpayers, you worked on the SCAP, or the
SCAP funding.
SCAP funding, and that was an issue of taxpayer money not being reimbursed by the federal government. What happened with that?
You know, it's another broken promise to the state of Colorado and the county sheriffs all over Colorado. SCAP funding is criminal alien funding. If you have someone who's an illegal alien and they've committed a crime, the counties and the state were supposed to be reimbursed 10 cents on the dollar.
Just 10 cents.
Just 10 cents on the dollar for housing these inmates. We've been cheated. Between the counties and the state, we're owed $5 million from the federal government. Had an opportunity to talk to Attorney General Alberto Gonzales about that when he last visited Colorado at Supermax. And he said, I told him, I think we should sue you. My Attorney General, John Suthers, has no interest in suing the federal government, which I think is wrong. We've been cheated our $5 million.
Does this happen in other states as well?
No state has been paid their SCAP funding in the country.
So
not
that
one.
That means that the federal govment is allowing...
And I should go back for 2006.
For 2006. So the federal government's allowing a policy, a lax immigration policy, for one thing. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that policy is resulting in people coming into the country that sometimes get into criminal situations. And then when we, the taxpayers of Colorado or other states, house those inmates, adjudicate them, provide them public defenders, translators, things like that, we should get reimbursed for taking care of that problem, which is a federal issue. Yet the federal government does not pay back.
The federal government has not secured the border. Regardless of what anyone's position on immigration policy is, it is the federal government's job to secure borders. When criminal aliens commit crimes in our state, they're here because the federal government has not done its job. We've sent our money to Washington. We want a return on our services. We want our money back to the state. The federal government owes the state and county sheriffs $5 million. I wish Attorney General John Suthers of Colorado would sue the Attorney General of the United States. He said he will not. He says we will lose. I think that sometimes you take on a case
to make a point.
Not just to make a point, but I believe we can win. The loss happened in another court. Why not try it in this circuit? And you know, I believe it's his obligation to defend this state, and we deserve our funding back from the federal government because we're doing the federal government's job.
Yeah.
We are doing their job. But it goes to that end. Another question is raised: should we just deport those that have committed crimes?
Right.
In Colorado this past year, we actually passed a bill. We worked with Sheriff Terry Makita of El Paso County. What was happening, you'd have someone who would commit a violent crime.
Like attempted assault, murder.
Assault, murder, rape. And often that person who's going through the system, who happens to be illegal and a criminal, or hasn't been judged a criminal, but is going through the system, has the opportunity to deport. So they just leave.
So they pay their bond, and then they get an opportunity to deport, and we have no way of tracking whether they served any time, and they might even come back.
They might come back, and if it's your sister or your mother or your wife or your spouse that's had this attack, this felony, this violent felony, often I believe are the most important, I want that person locked up. And I don't care if what country they're from. If they're here illegally and they've committed a violent crime, you're going to do the time in our system. Because odds are if we just deport he or she, they'll just come back. And I'm duty bound to provide public safety by my role as a legislator, and I stand by it. I still believe the federal government should pay us for doing their job, and I would encourage anyone in Colorado to call Attorney General John Suthers and tell him he should sue Alberto Gonzalez and get us our SCAP funding. That's SCAP funding.
And it's $5 million just for 2006.
Just for 2006. The bulk of it's owed to the state, almost $3 million. The rest goes to county sheriffs all over the state for doing the federal government's job.
Wow. Well, I'd like to hear the human interest side of it is that for people who are incarcerated for profit by companies like CCA and Whack and Hut, they're incentivizing locking up people that aren't really a threat to society, nonviolent offenders. Yet we have the federal government not reimbursing us for housing violent offenders, and then there's even situations where we have to add new laws to make sure that those violent, illegal alien offenders don't leave the country.
Don't skip the system.
Don't skip around the system.
And interestingly enough, going back, Whack and Hut is now Geo Group. They sat on their contract to build this facility for 2 years. 2 years. It was supposed to be a 500-bed facility. I blame Geo Group for the taxpayers of Colorado having to send inmates and pay a higher rate to send them out of state to Oklahoma. We have 484 males sitting in Oklahoma. If that facility had been built like it was supposed to, we wouldn't have inmates out of state. I, to this day, wonder why we haven't made Geo pay back the state for the cost of housing those inmates in Oklahoma, because they did not keep their word on their contract.
Okay. Well, the other thing that seems to be really relevant here, I guess the larger question is we're having our manufacturing base. You mentioned this earlier. Our manufacturing base is going overseas. We're having a porous border that's eating up some of our regular jobs, driving down wages. Now we have a private prison company driving down correctional officers' wages. All of these things are happening, and then at the same time, the crop of people that are being produced are people that are going to turn out, instead of being decent American citizens with a chance of succeeding, life-repeating offenders, or generations of offenders in this kind of system of non-renewal, where they are making a profit off the suffering of our citizens that could be, good citizens if they were given treatment and therapy.
Absolutely. My father, I grew up in New York State, Buffy short for Buffalo. I grew up around Niagara Falls and Buffalo. My father actively performs FDR.
Oh, really?
He does a great job.
Mm-hmm.
It's no coincidence that I happen to be a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's father or mother is an attorney, odds are they have a greater chance of becoming an attorney. People do what they know. If someone's parent is a teacher, they'll often become a teacher. It's not a surprise that when your parent's incarcerated that you have a higher chance of becoming incarcerated, because somehow you've learned that system. We've got to get in there and break the cycle. There's no incentive for the private prison industry to see us reduce the number of people we send to prison. And we together, through treatment, through awareness, and through discussions like this, have to, on a very grassroots level, if need be, start beating back the influence of this for-profit prison lobby, which I call the recidivism lobby,
right,
in both Washington and our state levels, and start fighting for better use of our taxpayer dollars, not just to have them to go to bottom line profits of these companies that want to see more people go to prison.
And looking at, let's say you're an inmate that's created or has been incarcerated as a felon for a nonviolent, let's say a drug offense or something else, but it's nonviolent.
Bad checks.
Bad checks.
Bad checks often connected to drug use too.
Yeah, and you've served your time. You did a mandatory sentence. What are you looking at when you leave that prison situation? What kind of skills do they prepare you with, or resources?
We're not doing enough because our recidivism rates are too high. You get $100 and a new outfit. Another instance, I believe a crime that really needs to be looked at is when you have someone who's the felony drug dealer and the girlfriend or wife that happens to be
accessory
happens to be in that situation but is not actively participating in it.